4 centuries after the wooden palisades of Jamestown rotted into the soil, science has revealed one of its most privileged secrets. This story begins not with a history book, but with a coffin pulled from beneath the chancel of the settlement's church. The coffin rested exactly where only the most powerful colonists were buried. Inside lay the remains of a man celebrated as a gentleman soldier, adorned with a lavish military sash. He was remembered in colonial records as kin to the governor himself. However, when scientists sequenced fragments of his DNA, the data revealed unexpected connections. It didn't just match him to another high-ranking burial nearby. It uncovered a story the family never intended anyone to hear. This story crossed oceans, stained noble bloodlines, and was carefully erased from official records for over 400 years. What they uncovered wasn't just a genealogical curiosity, it was a revelation that changes our understanding. This revelation forces us to rethink what we thought we knew about the men who built and controlled. Jamestown isn't just another archaeological site, it's a crime scene, a burial ground, and a living laboratory rolled into one. Since 1994, the Jamestown Rediscovery Project has been peeling back layers of earth to reveal the skeleton of America's first permanent English colony. They uncovered post holes from fort walls, shards of 17th century pottery, corroded weapons, and even butchered horse bones. These findings tell of the desperate winter of 1609, a time of survival and hardship. In recent years, trowels and brushes have been joined by tools the colonists could never have imagined. Ancient DNA sequencers can read genetic code that has survived in bone for centuries. The process of extracting DNA isn't simple. It involves overcoming significant challenges. DNA degrades over time, breaking into tiny fragments, and the damp soils of Virginia are brutal to organic material. However, teeth and dense bones like femurs act as time capsules, protecting microscopic strands of genetic material. Researchers start by working in clean room conditions to avoid contamination, donning full-body suits. They use filtered air and sterilized instruments to maintain a pristine environment. A small sample, often from the dense inner dentin of a tooth, is ground into powder. Chemical solutions then extract any surviving DNA, which is sequenced and compared to modern databases. In this case, researchers focused not just on European ancestry, they zeroed in on mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA serves as the genetic blueprint passed down from mother to child, almost unchanged for thousands of years. In 2018, scientists linked plague victims from medieval London to bacterial strains in Central Asia. This groundbreaking research helped pinpoint the origin of the Black Death. A team published research in Nature Ecology and Evolution. Now, this forensic precision would rewrite the story of two high-status men. These findings would expose a truth their families attempted to keep hidden for centuries. To understand why two men were buried with honor under a church floor, we must rewind. We rewind to early 17th century England, a country desperate for power, profit, and prestige. By 1600, Spain had claimed vast territories in the Americas, including silver-rich Peru and Caribbean islands. England was a latecomer in this race for empire, fearing exclusion from the New World's wealth. Historian Karen Kupperman notes that the Chesapeake region offered a foothold to challenge Spanish dominance. In 1606, King James I granted the Virginia Company a charter to establish a colony in North America. The goals were bold yet vague, seeking gold, new trade routes, and a profitable economy. Behind these aims lay another motive: prestige. A successful colony would show England's power. The Virginia Company gathered 104 men and boys for the voyage, launching in December 1606. They set sail aboard 3 ships: the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery. The journey took over 4 months, filled with cramped quarters, rancid food, and disease outbreaks. Maritime historian David Cordingley notes that mortality rates for transatlantic voyages were as high as 20%, and that was before they reached hostile shores. When they finally anchored in May 1607, they chose a swampy peninsula along the James River, offering a deep-water harbor. However, it came with brackish, undrinkable water, clouds of mosquitoes, and poor soil. In hindsight, it was a disaster waiting to happen. From the start, Jamestown was a gamble. The odds were stacked against survival. Most men were ill-prepared for the work ahead. Many were gentlemen unused to manual labor, artisans lacking farming experience, or soldiers trained for combat. The environment wasted no time punishing them. The James River's water caused dysentery and typhoid. Mosquitoes carried malaria, sapping strength from settlers who were already malnourished. The swampy terrain limited fresh water and fertile ground for crops. Relations with the Powhatan Confederacy varied between cautious trade and open hostility. When tensions rose, Powhatan warriors could surround and cut off the settlement easily. The most infamous chapter came in the winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time. The colony was under siege, food supplies were gone, and reports of starvation spread. Settlers resorted to eating rats, snakes, and even shoe leather to survive. Archaeological evidence has confirmed these grim accounts of survival. In 2012, archaeologists found butchered remains of a teenage girl named Jane. The cut marks on her bones indicated survival cannibalism. According to forensic analysis, this is the earliest evidence of cannibalism in an English colony. Mortality rates during this period were staggering. Historian Lorena Walsh noted that from 1607 to 1624, around 7,300 people arrived. However, only 1,200 were alive by 1625. During the Starving Time, the population plummeted from around 300 to just 60 survivors. In this backdrop of desperation, burial practices took on deep meaning. Most colonists were interred in simple graves outside the fort. However, a select few leaders were buried inside the church. These floor burials were a statement of rank, not just about faith. Under the floorboards, 4 graves at the heart of this mystery were discovered. By the early 1600s, Jamestown's spiritual and political heart was its Anglican church. The first church was a crude wooden structure, but by 1608, it was sturdier. It stood within the triangular walls of James Fort, becoming the colony's sacred space. For England's elite, burial location mattered greatly. Being interred within the church was a public marker of status. In England, this privilege was reserved for the wealthy and powerful. The same tradition followed settlers across the Atlantic Ocean. In 2013 and 2014, archaeologists excavated the site of the 1608 church. They found something extraordinary under the chancel, near the altar. 4 graves were perfectly aligned and carefully constructed. These coffins were not hurried burials. They were crafted with skill. One coffin contained a delicate textile that shouldn't have survived. This spangled military sash was woven with silver threads and sequins. Textile historian Margaret Ordonez states these sashes were rare and symbolic. They were often worn by officers of rank, sometimes as ceremonial regalia. Artifacts, coffin placement, and historical records allowed for hypotheses. Reverend Robert Hunt, the colony's first Anglican minister, died in 1608. Captain Gabriel Archer, an early leader and critic of John Smith, died by 1610. Sir Ferdinando Wendman, the first English knight buried in America, also died by 1610. Captain William West, related to the governor, was killed in a clash with Powhatan warriors. While historical evidence seemed solid, the team sought confirmation. They suspected these graves might reveal more than just names. It was time to let science speak for the dead. In early 17th century England, the rigid social order dictated that power was not just about titles. It was deeply intertwined with bloodlines. Governor Thomas West, also called Lord de la Warr, personified this reality. Born into the English gentry, West's authority in Virginia stemmed from both royal appointment and family ties. When West arrived in Jamestown in June 1610, he was not alone. He brought with him a network of relatives, including brothers Francis, John, and Nathaniel. Along with them were cousins and gentlemen of status. all strategically chosen. This was no coincidence. Aristocratic families often sent younger sons abroad for opportunity. In return, these relatives reinforced the family's influence in the new colony. Among these influential figures were Sir Ferdinando Windman and Captain William West. Colonial records identified both men as kinsmen of the governor, highlighting their significance. Windman, a seasoned soldier, was the first English knight buried on American soil. He passed away from illness shortly after his arrival, leaving a lasting legacy. Captain William West met an even shorter fate, killed in a skirmish with Powhatan warriors. Both men were buried in the church chancel, their status solidified even in death. However, the term kinsman was flexible in the 17th century, encompassing various family ties. It could refer to cousins, nephews, in-laws, or even more distant connections. For the elite in Jamestown, these kinship claims were crucial, especially in a fledgling colony. Leadership legitimacy could often be fragile in such a new environment. Yet, historical records did not clarify the exact relationship between Windman and West. In a society obsessed with bloodlines, this absence of clarity was unusual. It seemed as if part of the family tree had been intentionally obscured. When scientists extracted genetic material from the remains buried under Jamestown's church chancel, they anticipated the DNA results would confirm historical records. The expectation was that Captain William West and Sir Ferdinando Windman were related through the West family line. Initially, the findings were unsurprising. Both men were of European descent, consistent with their status. However, when the focus shifted to mitochondrial DNA, the results became impossible to ignore. This genetic material is passed exclusively from mother to child, revealing critical connections. The DNA sequences were identical, not just similar, indicating shared maternal ancestry. As geneticist Johannes Krauss has noted, mitochondrial DNA acts as a biological fingerprint, and this posed a dilemma. The documented West family tree lacked a close maternal link between the two men. According to official records, they were connected through different means. This story begins with the male West line, not the female side. If the paperwork was accurate, this match shouldn't exist at all. In a sterile, climate-controlled lab, the DNA results didn't lie, yet the family genealogy seemed to have been edited over time. This discovery initiated a new kind of investigation, not one in the soil, but rather in centuries-old legal records. Amidst faded lines of ink lay the reasons behind this discrepancy. Historians uncovered a scandal the English elite had hidden for centuries. The breakthrough didn't come from a new excavation. Instead, it emerged from a stack of brittle papers in England's archives. While examining probate files and court documents related to Captain William West, researchers discovered a small but explosive clue. A testimony identified his mother not as the wife of a West patriarch, but as Elizabeth West, the unmarried aunt of Governor Thomas West. Elizabeth West never married, which was scandalous in 17th century England. If William was her son, he was born out of wedlock, making him illegitimate. In the eyes of both church and crown, this was a serious issue. Among England's gentry, illegitimacy could bar a child from inheriting titles. It could derail political ambitions and tarnish a family's standing. That's why such births were often hidden behind layers of vague language. They were fostered in secrecy or woven into family narratives. And that's precisely what seems to have happened in this case. He was given a military commission and sent to Virginia. His noble connections were to serve both him and the colony. Official records described him as the governor's kinsman. This was true, yet it avoided revealing the exact relationship. The mitochondrial DNA made the hidden link impossible to deny. William and Sir Ferdinando Windman had a maternal connection. This connection was strong enough to cut through 400 years of secrecy. According to lead archaeologists, this case is the first of its kind. Ancient DNA has been used to prove illegitimacy in early colonial America. The implications of this discovery reach far beyond one family. It's a reminder that polished portraits often mask human dramas, ambition, loyalty, and the desperate need to protect reputations. History books depict Jamestown's leaders as symbols of discipline and faith, but the DNA results remind us that they were human figures, navigating the same messiness of family politics and ambition as we do today. The revelation about William West's parentage adds layers to their stories. It forces historians to confront early colonial history's hidden truths. According to archaeologists from Jamestown Rediscovery, recent findings illustrate how archaeology and genetics expose truths. These truths often elude traditional paper records, which may have intentionally obscured facts. This discovery marks a first. Ancient DNA has been used to reveal illegitimacy among America's earliest English elite. This sets a precedent for how similar methods could challenge or confirm the pedigrees of other colonial families. The church chancel graves represent only a small fraction of Jamestown's buried population. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed dozens of unexcavated features both inside and outside the fort. Many of these features are likely to be graves waiting to be uncovered. Future work could combine ancient DNA with isotope analysis to reveal more about individuals. Isotope analysis can identify where a person grew up and the types of food they consumed. Environmental DNA from soil samples might reveal traces of disease pathogens. These findings could add more detail to the health crises faced by the colony. And Jamestown isn't alone in this pursuit of truth. Across the world, sites like Viking ship burials are being re-examined with these technologies. Each test has the potential to overturn long-accepted histories or confirm whispered suspicions. For over 4 centuries, the truth about William West's birth lay buried beneath these societal forces. Family loyalty, rigid social hierarchy, and the relentless drive to protect reputations played a role. Paper records were edited, relationships blurred, and inconvenient facts omitted from history. But soil doesn't lie, and neither does DNA. The graves beneath Jamestown's church held not just the elite's remains, but a guarded secret. This secret survived generations until a fragment of maternal DNA broke the silence. It's a reminder that history is never truly finished. The past may be written in ink, but it can be rewritten by a tooth, a bone, or a strand of genetic code. If one small patch of ground in Virginia can reveal a scandal, imagine what else is hidden. At Stone and Bone, we believe every layer of dirt has a story, and every story has the power to change how we see the world. So if you want more journeys into the places where science meets history, subscribe and join us. Because the next secret could be just one dig away.